Robert Kraus,
Present.
Jason Blair,
Here.
Kathy McMillan,
Here.
Terry Kavner,
Here.
David Roberts,
Here.
Janie Milo,
Here.
Glenn Lewis.
Here. This time I'll turn it over to the Parks Board so they can do their roll. Okay, Patty, would you call it up?
Violet May Young.
Here.
Eddie Vickers.
Here.
Sid Porter.
Here.
Robert Washington. Jeff Arvin. Kelly Maddox.
Here.
Charles Payne.
Here. At this time, I guess we'll turn it over to Todd.
Thank you, Mayor. Let me,
Oh, hold on just a second, Todd, I'm sorry. Item 2, it says that here is receive a presentation by Patty Banks and Associates on the proposed master parks plan. I'll let you address that.
all right, thank you. City Council member, Parks Board members, thank you for your time. I know your time is precious, so we want to hop into the main body of what we're here to talk about, which is the master plan. Let me begin by thanking a lot of people. The audience is of course, filled with people that have contributed to this report. Let me begin by thanking the Park Partners Group, which we had several meetings with them, and they were huge contributors to this plan. Councilmember Blair, Park Board members Eddie Vickers, Kelly Maddox, Charles Payne, city staff Elizabeth Jones, Stan Drake, and then citizens Ralph Sherrard, Robin Barlow. There may be others out here that I don't see, but they were a huge role in this whole plan. So it doesn't happen because of one or two people. It happens because of a group of people. And then I'd also like to thank the Parks and Recreation staff, Patty Brooks and Chris Villani and Mark Alexander and Karen Williams, all of whom are here. We learned a lot about ourselves through this process, which is good. That's what we intended for this plan to help us do. So this is a big deal for us. This is something that we're excited about, and we hope you are too. It's the plan, if you've looked at it and if you've seen it, it's an ambitious plan. And frankly, some of the things that we talk about tonight, if we can make happen, and we think that we can over the next 5 or 10 years, can really change more and significantly and for the better. Let me begin by first talking about why we did a master plan. A lot of times you have to look at yourself to figure out where you're at in order to know how you're going to move forward. And so the biggest part of this plan was to assess and evaluate what we do and how we do it. Just because we've done something for 5, 6, 7, 8 years doesn't mean that we need to continue to do it. And so we took a good hard look at every aspect of our department. What can and should we do different? Again, it goes back to just because you've done something one way for several years doesn't mean that you need to continue to do it that way. And the last 2 points here for this, add quality to life for people of all ages and backgrounds, and then make more a better place to live, work, and raise a family. And if you had to, why are we doing this? Those 2 things are it. To make more a better place to live, work, and raise a family. And we've identified programs and projects that can do that. I have up here that the process began May 2011. Actually, it began a little bit before that, because if you'll recall, we were debating the future of the pool. And it didn't take us long to realize that while at that point we were talking about the pool, really what we were looking at was the future of the Parks and Recreation Department, because the pool was a microcosm of really what we saw in our department as a whole. It was outdated, and it was overutilized and undersized, and so we thought that at that time that we needed to fix, obviously we needed to do something different with the pool, but moving forward beyond that, let's look at everything that we do. And so the process began in May 2011 because that's when City Council said, let's do a Parks Master Plan. The first one, by the way, for more. And here we stand today, 8 months into it, with a plan that we're excited about and has some game-changing kinds of things associated with it. We chose Patty Banks Associates because they emphasized one thing when they did their presentation. It was a citizen-driven process. This isn't the Parks and Recreation staff master plan. It isn't the Parks Board plan. It is the citizens' master plan. The first thing that we did was we identified the community needs and wants. That was what we built. Everything that you see coming in the next little bit was what the community needs, and then try to match those needs with what we can provide, and then their wants as well. We had nearly 1,000 citizens participate in this process, 964 to be exact. 60 different meetings were had, individual meetings, large public forums, citizen surveys, you name it, focus groups. We involved the community. Again, this is the citizens plan. I'll give you the 10,000-foot view from above, some broad things that you'll see tonight. One was we had we defined a clarity of purpose and creative vision for our department, and really maybe for the community as well.
Your slide, your next slide.
What's that?
Aren't you on your next slide?
I'm on the introduction.
I'm sorry. Forgive me. I thought we were on the next slide.
No.
by now.
I heard as a kid that you live up to your expectations. And so with this plan, we've raised the expectations for the community and for the Parks and Recreation Department. And we're excited about that. We're excited about the challenge. This next one, we verified what we thought we knew. There's a lot of things going into this that we thought we would find out, and those were verified, and that's very important. And then the plan identifies concerns and deficiencies. On page 25 of the plan itself, you'll see a couple of sentences about some things that we're doing right, but you'll see a whole lot of things about some things that we need to do different and change, and that's okay. That's what we need to know. That's how we'll learn, and that's how we'll make improvements. We identified significant improvements that we can and should do to take care of what we have. The citizens were very clear that before we do anything extremely ambitious, let's take care of what we have, our 11 parks and our facilities, take care of them as best as we possibly can. We identified projects that will enhance what we have. There's several, 2 or 3 parks, several projects that we've identified that will take things that are important now and make them even grander moving forward in the years ahead. And then the last one, and the most exciting things we hope, we've identified projects which are ambitious and can transform more and really make more different places moving forward over the next 5 or 10 years. With that, I'll have Dick Horton come up, and I'll speak just a little bit about Patty Banks Associates. We chose them for several reasons, but again, to emphasize the citizen-driven process that they talked about in their presentation as they talked to us about the plan. They have done a great job for us. Dick Horton, who's been the lead team member, has done a magnificent job, and we couldn't be more pleased with the work that they did. Dick's presentation will be a little lengthy, a lot of slides, but we think it's important that we cover a lot of the major things from the plan. Once Dick is done with his presentation, I'll come back up, do a few wrap-up comments, and lay out a schedule moving forward, and then we'll be happy to take some questions. So with that, I'll have Dick Horton come up.
Thank you, Todd. Mayor Lewis, members of the council, Chairman Payne, and member of the Parks Board, and City Manager Edie, and Assistant City Manager Stan Drake, and Todd Jensen, and to all of you in the audience. I hadn't looked around since I've been in here, but I recognize almost everyone here, and thank you to all of you for, as Todd said earlier, for participating in the process. It is a citizen-driven process, and how fortunate we are tonight to stand here, and at this moment in time, we feel sincerely that the things that we're talking about are accurately portraying the citizens' preferred future for their park system. And in a lot of ways, as that relates to transforming the community, we really feel that that's the case tonight. So we're excited about presenting some of the findings of the report. And as Todd said, he asked me to go into a little bit greater detail than maybe I normally would, because he feels that with the amount of effort that we put into this, that we ought to share some of it publicly with you tonight. So that's what we're going to do. In terms of the major categories that this plan asks us to investigate, you can see a list here, and I'm going to go down these individually and give you some of my observations about the community as we weaved our way through the planning process. For an example on history, I observed, and it's always relative to what I see in other communities where I work, but I observed a tremendous respect for the past here in Moore. Some of that might be related, in part at least. Tragedies have brought us closer together. I really feel by building trust and confidence in our abilities to recover and grow stronger than ever before. There's a huge, I think, core group of citizens here who pride themselves on knowing others by their first name. And by the way, we need to figure out a way to incorporate everything I'm talking about tonight into our future programs, including special events, into the design of our facilities, how they function, how they allow people to interact at those facilities with one another. And then we want to generate opportunities that embrace and extend that hometown feeling that exists now. Those are some of my observations. Demographics, as you know, the growth is strong and consistent. One of the outcomes of that is that you're probably already noticing, but there will be new residents, a lot of them. They may challenge us to leave our comfort zone at time. I've actually done planning work around the country where it's one of their major issues about, we have these Johnny-come-latelys that are telling us Moorites how to do it now. And so we have to be aware that that's probably already here, and if not, it's coming soon. And how do we embrace the values that are important to us here in Moore, and how do we somehow ensure that those will never leave Moore? And again, it's through our programming and all of the things that we do to remind people. The level of education and household income may provide demand for services that go way beyond basic services. Todd and his staff, they don't always have to have free or almost free programs. There are some people, as we think about all of the needs of the community, who might say, hey, I can afford to do anything you want to do, or that we want to do. We can afford it. So let's have services that serve a broad range if we possibly can. An aging population will demand more services. In about 30 years or so, for the first time in the history of the entire world, our population will look like a square versus the old triangle. We used to be very young and not so old, but we're quickly becoming as old as we are young. Well, aging citizens want programs and services too. As you already know, in terms of the younger population, we want everything in the palm of our hand in that smartphone. So we want timely information, and we have to understand there's always time constraints as our younger population is looking for things to do. I'm joined here tonight by David Knowles of our team with SAIC. They have an office just down the road in that other town, Oklahoma City. And David has been incredibly valued to our overall effort. David and his crew that spent a lot of time in the park system identified some deficiencies. You can see a few images here that show you kind of what we observe, but there are some safety issues like that handrail, for example. The height of that is not quite according to code. As you can see, our trash containers, there are more modern ways to take care of our trash. Shade is a real hot, if you will, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that way, but in terms of dealing with heat in our park system, man-made and or more planting of trees, which you're doing a lot of, is huge. You know, covered playgrounds, that kind of thing, where our children and families can enjoy those structures better. Drinking fountains, restrooms, signage are all deficiencies that you will be working on. There are a lot of opportunities. We've identified the need for some parkland in the southeast quadrant of the community. Elizabeth provided you, we think, with an excellent trail master plan, which includes visionary trails along the streamways and linking up to some new parkland in the southeast. We think in terms of equitable access to good parks in town, and I don't have a map here, I've got hundreds of them I could show you, but Parmalee Park, we think that should be upgraded and have some new things to do in that part of town that young people, families are looking for. We're going to show you in a few moments a concept of Fairmore Park and how that can transform that park and that area of the community. And then some additional information on what we're calling, at least on this slide, Central Moore Open Space. Recreation programs, we know from the citizens through the statistically valid citizen survey and other venues that I'll show you in a moment, health and wellness is the #1 benefit that citizens want from the things that we offer in the Park and Recreation Department. Special events is extremely high on the list, and that's where I'm going to go back to the slide I mentioned a few moments ago. There are some special events, if not all of them, where we need to emphasize who we are as a community and more. For example, there could be special events in neighborhoods or quadrants of the community. Through our theming, through our branding, we can emphasize who we are as a community and why this event is being held, and why we want not only our citizens to come together and speak to one another, but the visitors too, like they already are coming. But a lot of opportunities to embrace again what our value system is here and more. Comfortable places to sit in the parks, shaded areas, access to water and restrooms, and encourage people to sit down and relax for a while and talk to one another. Targeted programs at the community center. We have limited space, as you know, at the community center, and so what we want to do is link the kinds of programs and rentals, if you will, that we're doing there, link those to what the citizens told us they want through all of the public involvement venues that we offered. In other words, if we're providing program X, Y, and Z at the community center, but citizens want A, B, C, D, and E, why are we doing X, Y, and Z? We know now what citizens want. We know that tonight for sure. So why not use the space we have to promote health and wellness, for example, opportunities for our community? We took just a fairly quick peek, and I was over there for a meeting or two with the seniors, but there is some available time at the senior center. What about after-hours use of the center for programming? You know, we have limited space anyway. Why not try to take advantage of that space that's sitting vacant right now? And then we know, of course, how the school district is held in such high esteem. And of course, they're limited in terms of the programming they can do with their students. Maybe through our Park and Recreation Department, we can further, if you will, or advance our partnership with the school district, and maybe even have an office over there or whatever, but see what we can do to partner up with the school district to provide more programs for a very difficult age group to reach, some of our younger children. A part of our team out of Colorado, Denver, Colorado, Ken Ballard, Ballard King and Associates. This is a part of, this is Ken's assessment of the community center. As you can see, there are at least 9 items listed here. I'm not going to go through those. You can read them for yourself. Again, it's an older facility, and it's just like any other facility. As they age, capital investment is needed, if that were the choice. And we're, by the way, going to suggest something different. So, athletics. This was a part of my analysis. 3 bullet points here that would be important here and more, and important in most every community in America, but it was certainly clear here. The Parks and Recreation Department and the athletic associations are partners, and we must produce quality programs for participants. So the idea is that the programs that occur there are organized and produced by volunteers, and thank goodness that we have them, right? A lot of you sitting here have spent decades out there, decades. But we have to understand that we all have to work together to ensure that those experiences are good ones for those who are participating. For example, if we went out even just this season and asked the participants, how would you rate your experience from 0 to 10, with 10 being the best, 0 being the worst? I don't know what they would say, but the idea is that you don't get to 10 easily, right? There's just a lot of work. Continuity is everything in a program. When you show up, is the field ready to go? Are the officials there, etc.? And that's what the kinds of things that have to be done that take a lot of effort. There has to be proactive management of the activities that occur at city-owned facilities. I've done a lot of studies in a lot of states where we just assume everything is okay. Now, I'm talking like I'm the Park and Recreation Director. But all of a sudden, you see this press release where something went awry. It happens everywhere. Something didn't go well. Well, had we been working more closely together as partners, we might have known that there was a time of need, and maybe we could have helped out before the association went under. There are significant costs associated with opening the programs to non-residents that must be carefully weighed. I'm not saying that we shouldn't, but be aware that building and maintaining facilities, whatever they might be, in this case athletic fields, is an expensive undertaking. So if we're open to all comers, and that means that we have the need for an additional X number of fields, is that a project or a project type that we're willing to assume? Because we're usually talking hundreds of thousands and certainly millions of dollars. Aquatics. We know from our study there's strong citizen demand for a contemporary aquatic facility, and we also know that spray grounds are effective methods of providing close-to-home water experiences in every community. And so certainly that has been, we've heard that loud and clear. Park system maintenance, as I calculated and worked with Todd and his maintenance crew, I hear some ring, is that okay? I heard some reverberation there, is it okay? Anyway, as we calculated, what we asked the crews to do is tell us everything you do in the park system to maintain it. Give me this menu, this list, and then tell me, based on your timesheets ideally, or if those don't exist, your best guess, how many hours a year does it take to do what you've been asked to do to maintain the park system? Well, you see that number here in front of you. We calculated 16,300 hours. As it turns out, what they've been asked to do, 16,300, is only about 21, or is it 11.5 hours different?
11 and a half.
It's about 11.5 hours different than the man hours that we have available to do it. So what we're saying is that we are staffed to provide the level of maintenance that we're getting right now. What we're further suggesting in the study, though, is we think that level ought to be upgraded. There are 6 levels of maintenance that we use in park and recreation planning, and 1 through 6, and we happen to be at that midpoint, mode 3. There's mode 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're at mode 3. So if we want to elevate to a higher level, as you can imagine, we need additional resources. And that's going to be a truck or two, some turf management supplies, and some staff. And we've put some dollars and cents estimates to that you'll see in a moment. Another thing that we looked at, we worked with Elizabeth a little bit on this and others, but the parkland dedication ordinance is an important part or a piece of the overall park system. And one of our thoughts is that as developers come to town and construct, rather than end up with a lot of smaller, close-to-home parks, I'm not saying, by the way, there's anything wrong with any of those scenarios. It's what works best for us here in Moore. But perhaps we consider maybe a zone. In other words, there might be some interest on your part to have a larger park near a few neighborhoods where there's more to do, rather than a whole bunch of itty-bitty ones where there's one swing set or one sandbox or something. So, instead of just going neighborhood only, consider a zone. And then I think, what's important is what you think, but I think you might want to take a fresh look at the park development fee of $100 per unit. Because as you look at the cost that you will assume to develop a park, and if you just add up what you want and what it's going to cost, you might find out for the developments that $100 per rooftop might be a little short. The public involvement process, you can see here the venues that we offered. Again, thanking the park partners and all of the people who participated. It was a wonderful experience, none of which in my career have ever been more pleasant, ever. In terms of the participation, like Todd said, 964 participants, that's very good. In terms of extremely important outcome from that participation process is what you see here. And that is the what we will do and how we will do it. That's the foundation upon which all of the recommendations in the report are built. What we will do and how we will do it. And the graphic just really means to overwhelm you, I guess, with we always want to be looking for ways to make sure that our park system is sustainable. And we don't have time tonight to go into that, but it is important, as you can imagine. Now, in a statistically valid way, from 401 responses, at a level of confidence of 95% and a precision of plus or minus about 4%, 4 to 5%, we have some information here that will be extremely helpful. What I just said means that if we did this same survey, the identical survey 100 times, that 95 times, that's that level of confidence, we would get the exact same results at a precision of plus or minus 5%. So that's really good, and that's what we guaranteed. And so here's a few slides, maybe 10 or so. How would you rate the condition of the parks and more? And you can see 25%, you can read for yourself, excellent, and 51% good. When you add those two together, it's about 76%. I don't have in front of me, I've got it on my computer, but the value of working with ETC Leisure Vision to do this kind of market research, they work in all 50 states, and their office is just down the street from mine in Kansas City, and Ron Vine and I go back 30 years probably, but we've worked with them a lot. So Ron has developed, and he's the only market research firm in America that has it for parks and recreation. But Ron can tell us on these questions that he's asked in 50 states how we stack up against every other community where this question has been asked. Off the top of my head, I think the 76% total here is a little bit below what he would see in other communities, which we would expect. Have any of your members of your household participated in programs? We were not surprised. The 15% is low. The national average, give or take, is about 30%. And so, again, we weren't surprised because prior to getting our plan implemented, we'll come back in a few years, but we don't have the indoor capabilities, for example, where people can go and recreate. And then, with the exception of Buck Thomas Park, there's some things in the outdoor, the park system, where we just can't program them quite like you might somewhere else. So this was not a surprise, but it's good to know where we are and where we can go in the future, because I would expect over time we will be right in there with the national average of 30%. Now, you should learn from this that 30% are involved with the recreation program. Well, if you do the quick math, 70% are not. So we always want to know what that other 70% wants. And that's the beauty of doing this master planning process, is we've focused in a little bit on what that other 70% wants, okay? Now, of that 15%, and I told Todd earlier, this might get confusing, and I can't go point the screen very easily, but if you just take that slice of pie there, that 15%, and you can see that blue piece of pie there, if you just pull that out, their rating of the program, and you can see there, excellent 24%, good 59, etc. So that's just good information that Todd and his staff can work with and always be challenged and accountable for how can we get those ratings up to another level. It'll never be 100, it'll never be 99, but can we do better than 24% excellent? This is a part of what that other 70% wants and more, and you can see here for yourself. Households that have a need for various parks and recreation facilities, trails and sidewalks. Rarely in any community in America is it lower than 2 or 3 at the most, but it's usually 1 or 2. Now, I think there's some confusion in terms of the size of our parks, whether they be small or large. And so it is what it is on this survey. But again, you can see here for the pools that they ranked 3rd on this list, and you can go through this list. Also, it's always important on every slide I show, but look at what's on the bottom as well. In a need for recreation programs, there's only 2 other communities in America with which Ron Vine has worked, and I told you he works in all 50 states, where a farmer's market was 1 or 2, and so only 2 in America. Well, to me, think of what that says about us here in Moore. We really like what we already have. I went down and interviewed the farmers market group one day there by the community center, and just imagine how that could grow if we can improve that experience, and we're going to show you some images in a moment. And then special events, again, we talked about that a moment ago. There's a real appreciation here for special events. and then always adult fitness and wellness, and some other things you see on the list here. In terms of, again, that 70% and what they might like out of their experience in the programs of the park system, restrooms, drinking fountains, shade trees, that rarely changes. People want to go to a park, if they do want to go at all, but they want to find a comfortable place to sit with shade and have access to restrooms and drinking fountains and trails, that kind of thing. So this is something that you can invest some dollars in throughout the park system, and it'll be well received. We asked if citizens had used the pool in the last couple of years, and you can see no. I would mention here that there are two reasons why people quit using facilities. It can be aquatics, it can be a community center, it can be a park or whatever. But in this case, your pool got physically obsolete. There were some repairs needed to be made, but also, probably for a while, it was functionally obsolete. There's just not enough there to do to attract users. And with all of the contemporary facilities that we see now, with all of the interactive play features, the zero depth water, the shade in the water and on the deck, things to do, there's sand volleyball on the deck sometimes. People are looking for they're looking for experiences, and for a lot of our older facilities, those just weren't designed that way in that era. Believe me, I've managed a 50-year-old pool, and I know how difficult it was to get people in the front gate. Now, in terms of if there were a new community center, what kind of programming spaces would you want? No surprise, indoor or outdoor, walking and jogging tracks are extremely popular. You can see again that our pool ranked very high, and then all of the other options here that they were provided. Now, when asked about if you had a $100 bill, and Ron uses a $100 bill just because he's had more success, people can relate a little bit easier to $100 than like 100 billion or something like that, and they get all mixed up with all those zeros. So 100 just seems to be an amount that people can relate to a little bit easier. And so when asked how they would allocate that $100, you can see, at least in part, I think there's fairly high interest in doing a lot of things all at once. Certainly you can see the higher amounts going to outdoor swimming, improving our park system, and then new indoor facilities. But look at the $15 for trails, 11 for stadium, 9 for some other things. So there's a lot of interest here, and that's a nice result to kind of analyze. In terms of the funding choice, the preference for a funding choice, it's sales tax. It almost always is. You can see the amounts that people said they would be willing to pay. And the key is for the improvements that they want. Don't go to them, and you wouldn't, by the way, but don't go to them with a list of projects to pay for that they didn't say they wanted. I know it sounds silly, but there are some communities that have done that and failed miserably several times. And here's why I said the sales tax. When asked if they wanted sales tax or property tax, you can see that the sales tax ranked very high. And would you vote in favor? If you see the vote against 13% and the vote in favor 52, that's a 4-to-1 ratio. And in Ron's world of market research, that kind of ratio is extremely good. 3-to-1 he thinks is outstanding, and you have 4-to-1. So the likelihood that citizens would vote in favor of implementing this master plan for the projects they want is exceptionally good. And then the value that citizens get from the Parks and Recreation Department, and you can see the numbers there. Now, recommendations. Remember a while ago we talked about those guiding principles that came out of the citizen involvement process. And so what we're going to do, taking care of what we have. We know that citizens want us to take care of what we have before we build something new. You know, they don't want to drive by their favorite park or facility and see work that needs to be done and then say, oh yeah, well let's build some new ones. We want some more that we can't take care of either. And so taking care of what we have is huge. And so we talked a little bit ago about improving our park maintenance, upgrading our parks, the things that we saw on the slide a moment ago, restrooms, a new trash collection system, trees and man-made shade structures, fountain signage, lighting, parking. Also protecting the environment, as per Elizabeth's plan, the streamway trails, the arboretum, things that we can do to upgrade the arboretum. We talked about policies. On the technology, we need some software so that the Park and Recreation Department can make the registration process, getting involved process a lot easier for citizens. They can go online, for example, sign up for their favorite activities, and then we have some information to track as well and follow up and make sure that we're meeting the needs of our citizens. Enhancing what we have, developing Parmalee Park, spray ground, loop trail, shelter, restroom, and some other things. It'd just be a really nice place to go. Spray grounds in several locations throughout the community that are geographically distributed to provide equitable access to spray grounds. Shaded playgrounds so that those experience, if you notice during those warm months that we get, how rare it is to drive by a playground and see mink used during the day especially, it's because it's too hot and it's actually dangerous to touch some of that equipment. It'll burn your hand. And so shaded playgrounds are something that we really do need. We have loop trails scheduled in several of the parks, a dog park and frisbee golf course at Tom Struhall Little River Park. And then really kind of the transformational ideas here. Visionary trails, outdoor leisure pool, a Fairmore Park attraction I'm going to show you a concept on, a modern community center, tennis courts at Quail Ridge Park, Central Moore open space. And so Fairmore Park, for an example, we envision kind of gutting the park as it is today. And this is probably extremely difficult, if not impossible to read. I can't even read it from here. And so we want to take that playground and upgrade it and really a huge splash park water feature. And on this special more attraction, you or somebody want to? Yeah, I think this is really interesting.
One of the outcomes of our focus groups was we talked to people of all ages, young, seniors, various backgrounds, and one of the things that was suggested was a museum, and in particular a Toby Keith Museum. And we think that that would be a great addition to Moore. And a couple of things is, one of our consultants, Steve Rhodes, who's not here, but who's with Patty Banks Associates, as he got off at the airport, various communities have flyers there. And there really wasn't anything that was more centric, if you will, that said, come to Moore. Warren Theater would probably be the closest thing, I would guess. But a Toby Keith Museum would be something that we could pursue and would be an attraction for Moore. It would be unique to Moore. And this park is so close to I-35. It is in, of all of our 11 parks, it's in probably the worst condition of the 11. But it's the most seen. 90 to 100,000 cars a day go by there. We think that that's something to pursue. And let's say that we can't make that happen, then certainly there's been interest in the community about a more historical museum, and we could make Toby Keith a portion of that. So we think that would be unique, it would be attractive, and it would be, from an economic development standpoint, we think it would bring people to more outside dollars. We just think it would be really unique and something that we could pursue. We've talked to Toby Keith and his family, and they're interested, but this isn't something that would happen in the next year or two. We'd have to pursue this, and it would be a long-term project, but we think that it's of such significance that it's worth pursuing and seeing what we can make happen with that. Now, if all that falls through, there's two other alternatives that we can look at. It would be a more traditional park, but basically it would be redoing Fairmore Park, whichever option we go with.
And like Todd said, this is alternative one, and we have two more that give the appearance of this, the color and all of that, but they have different features. A couple of nice things about the Fairmore Park with the alternative one. It's a public-private partnership, so the city wouldn't be assuming all of the financial responsibility, in our minds at least. And number two, especially if it's a Toby Keith Museum, we think that area, it would lend itself to some additional development because of that attraction and the usage of the people that would want to come by and use it. Now, Central Moore Open Space, transforming the community. We envision an area where all of these things occur, not in any order. Outdoor leisure pool, a modern community center, farmer's market. You can see an image of a community garden there. Public art. I'll just go back. Here's some other images that I'll show in just a second. But public art, amphitheater, a depot replica, the one that's out on the highway now. That's is that a used car or something?
Shields.
Walking trail, man-made shaded area, water spectacular, and you can see some of the images that just get you to dreaming a little bit. Obviously, that community center is huge. Might not be the size we could afford here in Moore, but still something really contemporary. Shaded areas, that may not be it. That's one I took down in Texas, but still it's a shaded area to give you an idea of what the color can add to an area, plus just the comfort of, that happened to be an athletic facility where you could go and get out of the sun between games. You can see a modern aquatic facility down here below, and then the community garden. And then just dream a little bit, but you can see some of the art, the horses there under the lights. You can see in the upper right some kind of a stage, amphitheater where events could occur. The water spectacular, that's not huge in the middle, but it could be any size or shape that we so desire. You can see in the lower left there a trail with art. When I was the director in Los Alamos, New Mexico, around a lake, we had permanent art, but we also had rotating art to keep it fresh. And being near Santa Fe and Taos, New Mexico, we had artists galore, right? So we could rotate the art in and out at certain stations every few months, 6 months. If you wanted to go a year, that's fine. And then down in Arkansas, I've got tons of farmers market kinds of structures. That's just one that I pulled out. But we envision all of this in an area in Central Moore, and I think that could be pretty huge. Funding sources, I don't know, Todd or Stan, if you want to touch on. We've identified what we think are some realistic, we think, funding sources. This would be phase one of the project through 2017. You can see the project types there in that left column: park maintenance, the upgrades I mentioned a moment ago, loop trails, the spray grounds, that Parmley Park that we talked about. I didn't talk a lot about Buck Thomas, but we've got a phase one and a phase two at Buck Thomas. And then this Central Moore public open space. And then the phase two in 2018 to 2022, we have Buck Thomas again, the Fairmore Park concept that I showed you, land acquisition in the southeast quadrant primarily. And then you see some totals there. And I don't want to skip over this too quickly, but did Steve or someone want to?
Yeah, I will. Obviously, you can see that this is fairly ambitious, $41 million. And it's the first that you've seen with this. But I think what we envision going forward in terms of once we get the plan out there, once we get the plan adopted by the Parks Board and the City Council, and that is then to begin to look at the funding sources, quite likely some sort of a sales tax effort to look at, to begin to fund some of the things that our citizens are asking for in terms of things we need to do now. Take care of our parks that we have currently. And then the bigger projects, the Central Moore project, those are $20, $30 million projects we're talking about. Those will obviously have to be larger issues, bond issues, or a significant sales tax, perhaps part of the half cent that we have currently for streets and public works. We're public safety. In any event, we're gonna be, talking about, looking forward to determining what sources of revenue, what we'll be able to do, over the next really several years with regard to this. And I think it's been pointed out that we're talking, this is a 20-year horizon on this plan. This is very ambitious, I think very exciting, but it also will obviously be somewhat costly, and we need to be able to determine how we're gonna pay for those things and then go to our citizens ultimately at some point and visit with them about it.
Just showing graphically how that funding would look. You can see that taking care of what we have is that blue color there, enhancing, and then planning and preserving and building for the future. Just one other way to show the information. Now, believe it or not, Todd and always working with Stan and their staffs, they've already started to do some first steps. And thank you again, Mayor. I had your picture in here, but you came to several of our meetings, so and others did too, by the way. A lot of you did. But anyway, thanks for coming to those and helping us out.
Let me just talk about some of the first steps that we've done. You're always afraid that when you do a study like this, it's just going to sit on the shelf and gather dust. And we want you all to understand, and the citizens to understand, that this isn't. We're already doing some things. One of the things that was identified, if you go to our parks, there's a great deal of signage, different looks. There's no theme to it. There's no brand to it. So we're trying to address that. We just planted about 130 trees at Veterans Memorial Park along Bryant. That was one of the things that was suggested as a part of the master plan. We'll do those kinds of things throughout all of our other parks. We're doing some indoor programming changes at the community center. Some of our programming was 3 to 8 years old. And so we're based upon what the citizens said as a part of the survey. We're trying to take our programming to match those needs. We're doing some long-term planning and goal setting, and we'll evaluate all of our programming that we do on an annual basis. We're looking at our maintenance management in our parks to see if we can, rather than mow our parks every 8 to 9 days, can we make it a little bit quicker than that, and move from that mode 3, that mid-level range, to maybe a little bit higher. We've already began to look at the software. What kinds of software can we get to do our pavilion rentals and our room rentals and those kinds of things. And then lastly, branding our parks, create signage and benches that will go in all of our parks. I mean, when I came on board about 18 months ago as Parks Director, I noticed there is no brand. Some of our parks didn't have signs that said the name of the park, so you didn't know if it was an Oklahoma City park or Moore Park or whatever. So we're beginning to try to create that brand for our system, for our park system as a whole. With that, just to move forward, how we'll move forward with the calendar, to let you all know, January 31st, the Parks Board will have a special meeting to consider forwarding this to City Council. And then we think, based upon that schedule, that we should be able to bring the plan to you February 6th for your consideration as well, City Council's consideration. And one thing I would like to address too, Dick talked about Parmley Park. Just so you all know where that is, it's behind Station 2 at roughly 12th and Janeway. Just so you heard that, we want to make sure you understand where that is. It's an underserved portion of our community in a demographic that we think needs some a nice park, something that they can enjoy. So I think with that, Dick or myself will be happy to take some questions.
Just another item that we've provided, you can see here. We took the entire plan of a couple of 100 pages or whatever, and it really can be condensed down to this one page, if you will. And so Todd, I brought him a couple of huge copies, 3 by 4 feet or so, and I brought some boards, and he's going to have those on display when you're ready, I think here in the lobby and maybe at the community center. And so if you don't want to read a couple of 100 pages, this would be a really short executive summary here, and I believe that's it. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
You see PATH 2022, that's the name that we've given the plan, PATH, and that's an acronym for Parks, Aquatics, Trails, and Health, health being indoor programming, community center activity kind of thing. So with that, we'll be happy to entertain any questions that you all might have. Well, I hope that's a good sign. I'll take it as a good sign.
In looking at
No, Dick, I don't think, we didn't take a look at golf at all. as
Because,
far as-
we have a golf course in town that if at some point in time the city doesn't possibly purchase that, we'll lose it.
Mhm.
And that would be a significant recreational, activity for that, that we would lose, so.
Yeah,
The
that
other thing, and I know that this is probably getting a little deeper down into it, but he was talking about some of the needs and so forth and some of the things that we wanted in facilities. Are we still communicating with the YMCA as to a potential facility?
Yeah, we had a meeting with them, what, Steve, 6, 7, 8 months ago, I guess, very early on in the process, maybe a little bit before this process started, and just to get a current update from the Y as to their interest in more, and there's an interest in more. Financially, they are strapped because they, I believe, opened up a YMCA in Edmond, and they're working on one in Chickasha, and so financial-wise, they're not in a position to do that. So we think that they will eventually come to more. We just don't think it's in the near term meaning in the next 5 years or so. But I do sit on the early one.
That was a pretty high priority to come to more. And the only thing that was in advance of it was that West Edmond facility.
Mhm.
But I noticed that somebody gave them
Yeah.
facilities at Northwest Highway recently.
Mhm.
And I still think it's pretty high priority. But
Yeah, and they voiced that to us. It's a financial issue for them
Yeah.
at this point. I think 2 years ago or 3 years ago when the economy was in a little bit better position before everything happened nationwide, I think it was a little bit stronger, but there's a lot of interest. I just don't think that we see that happening in the next 5 years or so, 3 to 5 years certainly. Steve, was there anything you wanted to add?
No, I think that would be right.
one other, in your planning and so forth, did you take into consideration this playground that's universally accessible?
We did. There was a master plan that was done for Buck Thomas alone several months ago before this whole process started. So that was built into that.
Okay.
So, and that's part of the cost estimates for the Buck Thomas Phase 1. Okay.
I'd just like to say something. I'd like to say thank you very much for all the parks people. I appreciate all the work you guys put into it. You're kind of like city council, you do it for free, and I really do appreciate it. I know the citizens appreciate you too. So all you guys out there appreciate all the work you do.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. So the next item, adjournment.
Make a motion to adjourn?
Second?
Thank you. Chairman Payne, I guess, do you need to do adjournment too at the same time? I don't know.
I guess so.
He was doing his first and then I did y'all.
Jim, call the roll for the city council first, and then
Okay.
Jason Blair,
Yes.
Kathy McMillan,
Yes.
Terry Kavner,
Yes.
David Roberts,
Yes.
Janie Myle,
Yes.
Robert Kraus,
Yes.
Glenn Lewis.
Yes, and I appreciate everyone coming out tonight. Thank you.
Okay, from the Parks Board, do I have a motion for adjournment?
I'll make a motion for adjournment.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Patty, would you call the roll?
Violet May Young, Eddie Vickers.
Yes.
Sid Porter,
Yes.
Robert Washington, Jeff Arvin, Kelly Maddox. Yes. Charles Payne.
Yes.